We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Saturday, and I have some good news. He's been away for a while, but Ed comes back. Ed has returned, and he joins us on this. Don't do that. I'm going to tell you why you don't want to do that.
Why is that?
I had a guy on here
Yeah.
who's taken a lot of heat from people. Okay.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And his name is Larry. And Larry happens to be married to Ilona.
Okay.
Ilona's an absolutely lovely, intelligent woman. Larry's, how do I say it? I don't dislike Larry, but he's very effusive. He's very, and he came on the show a couple times, and well, one time he's been on the show, and at the break he comes with a mask and stuff like that, and thought it was hilarious, and I didn't see that. I didn't get it. So I will say you're the first one who's ever done it. And I don't have a problem with what you're doing because we're just a couple of old fools acting silly.
That's right. Exactly.
Anyway, the king. You can't even go out to Burger King and get a real fake crown. He's got to make one, hand make him.
That's right.
A DIY crown, if you will. Well, Ed, it's been a long time. We got a shitload of stuff to talk about, and I'm sure you've got plenty on your mind. The only thing I would say is you're in your 70s, right?
Right.
I'm in my 60s, mid 60s. Do we have the physical and mental capability to push through a full hour? I don't know. According to some Democrats, we probably don't. But let's give it a shot.
We'll give it a try. I got some vitamin B1 here. I'll just pump that in here if I need it, and we're good. I think.
So what's been pissing you off, Ed?
Oh, let's see. Well, I'll just jump in on this one. This guy's up near your area. He's a Wisconsin Republican. His name's Glenn Grothman. And yesterday, he was railing against the idea of providing government funds for child care. And he says, I want to see the Republicans push through an agenda where and I'm sure he didn't think before he said this, but where we put things back like they were in the 1960s when it comes to child care. And of course, what he means is all the women stay at home and take care of the kids while the men go out and work, right?
Right.
That they get back in that subservient position. We take away their birth control so that they have a passel of kids they have to stay home and take care of and so forth. Of course, they never address the fact that one income generally is not enough in this day and age. So you're condemning these kids that you're going to have, because it's like when I was a kid, the only birth control was, I suppose condoms were around, but they were hard to get unless you were married and could prove it. But there was something called the rhythm method that primarily Catholics used, I guess, but others probably too. And the old joke was, what do you call people who use the rhythm method? And the answer was parents, right? So I'm not, I know you have kids and you love them, you have grandkids and they're the light of your life and so forth, but for some women, it can be a trap. That's just the fact of it, because once you have a couple of kids, then that limits what you can do outside the home, or it should. I must say that I agree that kids are better when they're parented, but daycare has come a long way since I was a kid. And around here, most daycare is the grandmother is taking care, or maybe an aunt or somebody like that is taking care of the kids, because both people have to work if they want to have any sort of a lifestyle. Of course, when this guy, what's his name again, Grothman, when he says, I'd like to turn things back to the 60s, he really means that. And so do the Republicans. They'd rather make it the 1860s, of course.
Right.
But in all ways, they don't like civil rights. They don't like the fact that the LGBTQ people have any rights at all and aren't criminalized for having the relationships they do. They'd love to recriminalize any sort of same-sex conduct, forget marriage, right? They'd love to get women back in the home. They'd love for women not to be able to get a credit card. most people don't realize just the other day was the 50th anniversary of when women were able to get a credit card on their
Wow.
own. 50 years, that's all, folks.
Well, you know,
Before
this,
that, for that, ladies, you were chattel. If you want to go back to that, vote Republican.
well, that's the interesting thing. They were that way in the 60s and some of the 70s, and then that went away. We dealt with women's rights and Roe v. Wade and all that sort of thing. But it's just until recent times, till the emergence of Donald Trump and MAGA, that they're now comfortable saying the quiet things out loud. We want to
Right.
go back to the 60s, which is absolutely ridiculous. And I don't think it's playing too well for them in this country. And that's what I don't understand. It doesn't play well for them, but they continue to embrace it. Are they stupid? Are they trying to sabotage themselves or what?
I think they believe that there are more people like them than they think. It's been several years ago now, but I was involved with I think it was a Yahoo group, if you can remember those, where people of like mind or had some sort of connection would come together and you'd email. It was an email forum kind of thing, and so I got back in touch with a lot of people I went to high school with through one of them, and one of the women was very right wing, and we clashed quite often, and we just had an election, and um, I said, well, at least half of the people in the country agree with me. And she lost her mind. Half of the people can't possibly agree with that. And I pointed out that the election had been almost 50-50. So,
Right.
yeah, they did. I think they overestimate the number of people who really do feel as they do and that are that deluded. And that just shows, having been in a cult at one time myself, an evangelical cult, I know for a fact that that's what happens when you're inside. Yeah, you see everybody else is deluded, not yourself.
Right. Well, that's the thing. You do hear that a lot, especially out of Donald Trump. He talks about Roe v. Wade. He said everybody's behind Roe v. Wade. Everybody in this country, all the doctors and all this stuff, everybody's behind it. And that it couldn't be further from the truth. We know 70 to 75% of the people support Roe v. Wade. So how is it that they can say that? There's only two reasons. They're gaslighting or they're
Right?
absolutely delusional or a
Yeah,
combination thereof.
exactly. And it's mostly gaslighting. They think if they say it often enough, number one, it reassures their base, and of course they'll go, well, he said it, so it's got to be true.
Right.
But for the most part, I really do believe in this. This let me just go off kilter for a second here because I know we're going to get to this place eventually anyway. But the Biden critics right now, I saw a Democratic senator say, "Well, if Biden stays in, we're going to have a landslide for Trump in the fall." And that is so much bullshit.
Well, it
I
is.
mean, come on. There's not one Democrat who is a true Democrat, who is a true liberal, who's going to change their vote and vote for Donald Trump because Joe Biden appears to be somewhat diminished. Not one, not
Yeah,
one will vote for Trump. And I don't think many swing voters will either, based on what I've seen. Just Roe v. Wade alone, 70% at
I agree.
least of the American public support restoring the right to abortion for women to be able to govern their own bodies. At least 70%. It's probably higher.
Well, and the thing about it, we need to talk about that. That's the elephant in the room. That's the big story. And that's one of the things
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you about is this situation with Joe Biden. He does the debate, and he did not look good in the debate. But I don't know that
No.
he looked like he was losing it. He looked like he was really tired. He looked like he was sick or a combination, and he didn't perform well. On top of that, I believe his handlers gave him the wrong strategy. Just stay solid, stay strong, and tell the facts while this snowball rolls over the fucking top of you. If you've got
Yeah.
a guy like that who you're up against in a debate, you got to kind of match the energy. You got to have that energy to push back, and they didn't have him do it. Maybe he wasn't capable because of the way he felt that day. But from that moment, that 190-minute moment, we've had the Republicans attacking him. They've seemed to have backed off a little bit, though. They're not talking as
Yeah.
much about this. And of course, the media sees blood in the water, so they jump all over it to make it into something that it's not. But the real interesting thing is the Democrats. Not all Democrats. People, if you watch the media, you would think, oh, the polls have tanked for Joe Biden, and all these Democrats are fighting against him. What's going to happen? First of all, the polls haven't really changed at all. And that's
Nah.
pretty common with debates. No debate in history has really determined any kind of election, and they haven't changed that much. And now these Democrats that are coming out are trying to act like they're a big faction, a big caucus of Democrats pushing against Joe Biden. And that's not true. It's like 2-3% of the House and the Senate. It's not a big faction. Um, but they're pushing this. The Democrats are truly pushing this. And it almost seems like an organized attack against Joe Biden by the Democrats.
I think it is an organized attack against Joe Biden, but not by the Democrats per se. I think it's by the corporations. I think it's by the corporations that own the media, because the enemy here is not Donald Trump. The enemy here is not even the Republican Party. The enemy here is the concentration of power and wealth in the corporations and the people that get their money from the corporations. That's the enemy. Never forget that. They own practically everything. They control your food, they control your energy, they control your health care. They want to control everything. And that's what they do, control the media. It's been going on for years where they say, well, we're balanced, and they give you somebody from the center right and somebody from the extreme right, and they call that being balanced. No, there's a few that lean a little bit left, but then I see them slipping too, and they will, as you said, they will always go for the blood in the water. Remember, all of the networks are in the business of selling soap. That's what they do. They
Right.
could give a shit about anything else. Individuals within may have some integrity, but the overall organization is in the business of selling soap, period. And what they will do is they will create a controversy where none exists, because controversy, as we know, whether it's online or on TV, it brings people who are interested, who have a viewpoint, who want to see their viewpoint strengthened, and they will go to MSNBC if they're left. They'll go to Fox if they're right, to get what they believe
Right.
enhanced, or they just want to see somebody agree with what they think, right? And the media, of course, will try to make a horse race out of anything. Now, they could just as easily be talking about how terrible a candidate that Donald Trump is. This is a felon. He's convicted, a convicted felon who just hasn't been.
Well, it looks like Ed stuck up. Let's see if he comes back here.
Because he was lying about the woman that he raped, right?
Right.
That's what cost him the money. But still, he has been identified as a rapist. He was a good friend of Jeffrey Epstein, and there's at least one 13-year-old girl who says he raped her. Why aren't the media talking about that? No, they'll talk about Joe Biden's age. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of unscrupulous Democrats, and we see it every time there's blood in the water for a Democrat. They pile on, whether it's Al Franken or Cuomo or whoever it might be. There'll be plenty of Democrats who come right in there, and I will never understand that, because the Republicans never do that.
Right. You're absolutely right. And the point you make about the money, that's what people have to realize. When you think about big money and big corporations, you think Republicans. But there are Democrats that are fed and nurtured by big companies and big money. And it'd be interesting to take a look at these people that are pushing against Joe Biden and find out where their money's coming from. And I almost guarantee you there's big corporations. Old Soul was on recently, and and she suggested something that makes a lot of sense. Reason why some Democrats, big money Democrats, don't like Joe Biden is because in their mind, he's gone rogue. When they
Yeah.
agreed to put him in position, he was a centrist. Now he's
Yes.
talking about feeding money back to the middle class, getting the middle class to grow out and up as opposed to going to the rich people. He's talking about taxing the rich people. He's talking about healthcare. He's talking about forgiving loans. Now he's the enemy of big time corporate America, the wealthy. And this is why he's getting the pushback from even Democratic representatives.
You're absolutely 100% right. Gore Vidal, many years ago, you may not remember Gore Vidal, but
I do.
he was a very erudite commentator, and he wrote some great books and so forth. And he was on TV a lot, and he said something that has stuck with me forever. There are no political parties in the United States. There's only one, and we have the left and the right wings of the property party. It's
Right.
absolutely true.
That is true.
And once money, once the bogus Supreme Court opened the floodgates of dark money into politics, then it became just a race um, between. I mean, the font of is the same whether you're a Democrat or Republican. You need that corporate money. Um, Originally, before Reagan, it was the labor unions who fed the Democrats, right? With the labor unions diminished, we turned to places like Hollywood, where there was big money, and it's still there. And we see George Clooney raising money. We also see George Clooney suddenly turning on Biden. Why is that? I mean, I'm not going to condemn George. I'm going to say that, by and large, that I think he's a solid citizen and that he uses his money in a good way. I wonder if he's not being a spokesman for some other people who don't want to speak out about against Joe Biden, other politicians who might want to use George as a mouthpiece. Um, at this stage of the game, Joe says I'm the only one who can beat Trump, and I think he might be right. I
Uh,
think Kamala has come on as a good candidate. I think Bashir. I think the California guy. Help me out.
Gavin
All
Newsom.
of the Newsom. These will all be viable candidates, but what people forget about Joe is that he has the connections. He's got a Rolodex like nobody owns. He was talking about Israel on his press conference last night, and he talked about sitting across from Golda Meir. Most of the people beyond you and me don't even remember who that was,
Right, right.
right? But Joe's been around that long. The original Israeli prime minister. Um, uh, I mean, who can go back that far? Who knows that many people? Who can call up somebody and say, "Remember when I helped you out with the blah blah blah? Well, now I need a payback," and they
Right.
will.
Well, it's funny. There are a lot of people on TikTok. There are a lot of people in the media that are going against Joe Biden and saying he's got to go. He's got to go. And it's an interesting study. These people who have done that are getting unmercifully attacked. And
Yes,
when I watched this press conference, I came to a realization that I don't know if a lot of people get. I think you probably do. Joe, as a politician, is a complete unicorn in today's world. He may
right,
not always been that, but at this point in time, that's what he is. He's a guy who has nothing to prove. He's
right,
been in Congress for decades. He's been a two-term vice president. He's president of the United States. He doesn't have to go after anything because he's got it all. He's got more than anybody sitting in Congress right there. And one of the things we found out in this press conference, he may be slow, he may stumble, but he knows more than any fucking buddy else. And that counts for something. But Joe's got nothing to lose in this situation. He's 81 years old. He's not going to be here this long. And when I listened to him, he's one of the few politicians, when he said what he said, I actually believe based on who he is and where he is and where he came from. He said,
absolutely.
I got to finish the job and I feel like I'm the best guy to do it. Well, I think in that press conference, he proved it. And he's got to finish the job. He's not looking for loftier goals or more money. He doesn't have the time for that. And he's already gained it all. So maybe for once we have somebody in the presidential office who seriously and profoundly wants to work for the people, because I'm not sure we've ever had that before, that they weren't working for their own benefit. Joe's got nothing to gain here. He's got nothing to lose. He wants to create a legacy, of course, but he really wants to do some good. And of course, the first time somebody wants to do that, he gets attacked by everybody. And that's what I find troubling.
And me too. I will say this about Joe Biden too. Joe Biden is not a billionaire. I'm not even sure Joe Biden is a millionaire.
Yeah.
He's well off. He's got two homes. He's not poverty stricken by any stretch
No.
of the imagination, but he's been there forever. And if he's not there, and if he's not super rich by now, then it's because he's working for other people and not for himself. He's not claiming, he's not, name me a president who isn't a multimillionaire. You won't find one. Maybe Carter, who was another man of integrity. You will not find them doing the deals and getting the deals and sitting on the corporate boards and all of that funnel money toward them. If you check the bottom line of an ex-president, you'll know how much of a man of the people they really are. I'm going to say that about Joe. And they talk about, the Republicans try to smear him and say he got all this money from Russia or from China or from this. And it's bullshit because there is no record of it. It's not in his bank account. It's nowhere to be found. So no, he doesn't take bribes. The guy who does, he's running against.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm going to say something about Joe Biden, see if you agree. You may disagree right up front, but then I'll explain my point. I will say that in my lifetime, that's Dwight D. Eisenhower to here, all the presidents. Joe Biden is the only sitting president that's beloved. Now, you might say Jimmy Carter, and that's true, but not really till after he left office. JFK, same thing. He became beloved after he was assassinated. Joe's sitting in office, maybe FDR back in the day, but that wasn't in my lifetime. What I'm finding out, and what a lot of people are finding out, the more Joe gets hit, the more support comes out. The black community's fucking pissed. They're ready to go to war over them picking on Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a sympathetic guy. People appreciate what he's doing. They know he's not, trying to gaslight them. He's trying to do the right thing. But right now, what's been exposed is that Joe is beloved, and that may be the problem for all these people attacking him. The response from the people isn't what they want. They're sticking up for Joe in a stronger way than they did before this all started.
Yeah, and I think I'm hoping that you start to see that. As a matter of fact, I'm hoping maybe we have one more week of this bullshit, and then somebody has got to stand up and say this stops now. This stops now, and it should be the DNC saying it, should be Obama saying it, it should be Clinton saying it, should be both Clinton saying it, it should be everyone who has influence in this. This stops now. We have a candidate. There will not be an open convention. We have, if you want Kamala to be president, there's a chance you might have her if Joe dies.
Right.
But
Or
otherwise,
retires.
or retires. But at the same time, and I do believe that he reaches a point where he thinks he's not capable of doing the job, he will do that. But that he would resign. But still, she will be the candidate after Joe. There's no doubt in my mind. The trouble is, I'm an old white guy, and I know old white guys pretty well. And a shitload of us will never. I'm not one of them. I'd love to have a woman president.
I would too.
Hillary Clinton would be president right now. Amy Klobuchar, I would sign on to Amy's presidency at any point. Um, um, there's others. There are many others that Elizabeth Warren. I'd love to see her in the presidency. I'd love to see her, vice president and then president.
Right.
Katie Porter. There are many others that I would support, but it makes me nervous because I see, like this guy was talking about when we started here, wanting to roll things back to the 60s, and he's not an aberration. That's most Republicans and a lot of Democrats too. They
Yeah.
really do believe white guys are about it. Well, they are about it, and it's time we were done. It's time that we take a back seat and let somebody else do it right because we have totally screwed it up.
Yeah, absolutely. This is what I've said about Joe. Joe had that one performance, and a bunch of people who are opportunists jumped on that. See, we told you he couldn't make it, that he needs to step aside. But since that time, he gave a rousing speech in North Carolina. He gave an impressive speech at NATO. He gave a good speech, a great speech in front of a union group, and he's done other speeches. And then he does the press conference. He has not faltered in any of those cases. You might stumble here and there, but the content is very clear. They want to send him packing. Now, if you took his speech at NATO and compared it against Donald Trump in a similar speech, there would be no comparison, but you don't see people doing it. Donald Trump would have gone off on tangents, said crazy shit, lied, self-aggrandized, doing all this shit, and he would look like an absolute fool. Still, not one media outlet, not one Democrat, not one Republican is standing up and say he should step aside. It does seem like an organized effort to either benefit Donald Trump or to make this a tougher race than I think it is. The polls can say whatever they want. Based on what you said about Roe v. Wade, the convictions, the tie to Jeffrey Epstein, all this stuff, I personally see that Joe Biden beating Donald Trump in a landslide because I see people reacting and upset. There are more people that won't vote for Donald Trump than will vote for Donald Trump or even vote for Joe Biden. This election is the same thing as it was in 2020. This isn't a vote for Biden. This is a vote against Donald Trump because people are fearful, and their fears have not been assuaged since 2020. In fact, they've been increased.
Absolutely, and many people will say this is our last shot, and it really is. It really is, because we've lost the Supreme Court. It is, pardon me, the Supreme Court is nothing but a partisan rubber stamp for the Heritage Foundation now. Whatever they want to put out there. And remember, none of this is Trump. Trump is a figurehead. Trump has no convictions. He has no policies. All he is a mouth, right? And
he's actually got 34 convictions, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, exactly. And there would be more, but for the fact that the judiciary has been compromised. And the Supreme Court has rendered this a ridiculous decision that will eventually be overturned, that the president has all this immunity. So much bullshit. I mean, nobody in their right mind agrees with that decision. It is totally bogus, completely wrong, and will fall. It will not stand. Even if we have to expand the court, get rid of it, it will be gone. But in order for that to happen, we have to elect Joe Biden again. We have to give him a Democratic Senate and a Democratic House. And then we can change the court. We can put in place an ethics, a set of ethics rules that most of them will fail. We can impeach at least two of them, which we have cause for. All we have to do is do it. And if we have the Senate and the House, we can get rid of them.
Right.
It should be done. I mean, Thomas should be gone like that. Alito right behind him. Then Gorsuch. Then Kavanaugh. Right. Boom, boom, boom. All of these we can do because all we have to do is do a little investigating. We got them nailed, right?
And we got to get rid of the filibuster too.
Absolutely.
If we want to get that done.
We got to do that too. But we got to elect Joe Biden. First of all, give him a Senate and a House, and then we'll deal with it. Because we've seen Project 2025, and once it became known in the mainstream, Trump started running away from it so fast that it might as well have been a rabid grizzly bear. Because you read the thing, or even a précis of it, you realize here we are in The Handmaid's Tale, people, and not even that. It's much worse than that. They want to jail librarians if a kid winds up with a book out, below their age range or above their age range or whatever. And this is all part of this, quote, Christian, and I use that term advisedly because it's nothing to do with Christianity. The Christian nationalist, it all goes back to the idea, it goes back to feudalism. where you have a few little people at the top who enjoy all of life and everybody else is a serf who works for them. That is the ideal. It's a marriage of church and state in which most people are slaves. That's their ideal.
Yeah.
There's, and especially women, but everybody is has to do what they say, when they say, as long as they say, and that's their ideal. Do not lose sight of that. And we see it all around the world. We see this resurgence of this right wing idea, and they're in. It's like once upon a time there was this great library in Alexandria, Egypt, that had all the knowledge in the world. Who burned it? The Christians. That's
Yeah.
who.
Yeah.
You know, because they wanted ignorance. They wanted, and I'm not saying that Christians are bad people, not true Christians. These people are not true Christians. They don't follow the Beatitudes. They don't follow love thy neighbor. That's what makes a Christian.
Yeah.
It's not the Ten Commandments. You know, that's Moses. No, this is this is this is something that is purely political, and it is purely a marriage of people who want to rule the world and make everybody else do exactly what they say. It has nothing to do with Christ.
I wanted to give an example of how the media manipulates the narrative.
Right.
Joe Biden got the heat for the debate, and then he gave a few speeches, and then people were starting to pull back. And the story came out in the media. They said, things Joe seemed to be pulling away from all this stuff and pushing through it. But this next day, everything crashed down. So I'm thinking, well, what the fuck happened? And then they explained what happened. The difference between Joe pulling away from all of this and the thing that brought him down was two things. Nancy Pelosi didn't step up and say what she was supposed to say, and George Clooney said he should go. Those are the only two things that changed from that day to this day, and that was enough to crash Joe's chances. You can say what you want about George Clooney. I think you're either with us or you're against us, and I think he's against us. So fuck George Clooney. And I'm a little irritated with Nancy Pelosi because she is a wealthy person, and frankly, she should take a cognitive test too if you listen to her talk. I'm
Yeah.
angry with these people because they're taking a very dangerous situation about winning this election, and now they're working against the country and the people. They're causing it to be more dangerous and more difficult for their own benefit for whatever reason. And that's starting to piss me off.
Me too. I mean, I'm not a violent person, but I want to bitch slap some people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I question why are you doing this? Even if you had those suspicions, keep your damn mouth shut. You know, this is July. It's a long way till November in one way, but it's not so long in another. Now, Joe will rise or fall on his own, whatever he does. I personally think he needs to get rid of some handlers and just be Joe.
Yeah,
But
I agree.
I saw somebody the other day say, well, people are seeing, you brought this up too, people are seeing Joe as having moved too far left. What we really need is a moderate. No, no. Um, well, who was it? The Texas guy, Molly Ivins used to quote all the time. The only thing in the middle of the road is yellow lines and dead armadillos. And that's for sure true when you come to presidential politics. You got to appeal to people. You got to tell them, I'm going to do this for you. And we know who Trump is appealing to, the racist. He's appealing to the people who have a lot of money. He's appealing to the people who want to enslave women. He's appealing to the worst possible people in the whole world. That's the Trump base. And that's the people that are attracted to Trump. And you have the Heritage Foundation wanting to put all of these insane rules in place, and they've already started. Look at the post office. That was I guarantee you they picked the guy to take over the post office that Trump appointed.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
know
no
they
question.
did.
Yeah, no question. You know, if Joe Biden at 30 years old looked at Joe Biden of 81, he'd probably say, no way, that's way too left. But you got to
Right,
understand the circumstances. You've got to adapt to the certain situation. We've gone so radically right. We've gone backwards in our life. You almost have to go further left just to bring it back to center. And I think
right.
that's what Joe's doing. And I think that's what he understands. He's got to go more left. The people of this country have been starved for any kind of attention, any kind of help. And now he knows in order to bring it back to the center, you do have to fucking do some stuff for people. The right will just keep taking and taking and taking. And that's not going to be, they're not going to be able to continue to do that. It's not sustainable because eventually they take everything from us. They've got nobody to grift, and we've got nothing, and we've got a country that's in the shithole. Joe understands that he's got to bring us back from the depths a little bit to get us balanced.
Absolutely. And one advantage of living as long as Joe has, and as long as you and I have, and me more than you, is that we do get some perspective. And my perspective is that there's a small window of maybe a dozen years, we'll call it 20 years, we'll call it one generation of Americans where life was a little more equitable. Before that, life sucked for most Americans. It did.
Yeah.
It was awful for most Americans, and it was particularly bad for minorities and for women. And during that 10 to 20-year period between, say, 1955 and 1975, things got better for almost everybody.
Right.
And then the pushback started. And by 1980, it was in full blower, and it's been going ever since. So we had about one generation there, and I was fortunate enough to be part of it, that saw equality, saw in almost every way, saw equality spread out across pretty much all demographics to a certain extent. And then it started to push back. We saw that one window open, and then they slammed it closed. We got to open it up again.
Yeah.
And the right will never do that, and the middle will never do that. They love the status quo if it's good for them.
Right.
But no, you got to go left. The truth is always to the left, never to the right. Remember that. It's always to the left. Truth is to the left. And
Yeah.
equality is to the left, never to the right.
Yeah.
Republicans are always wrong. Every one of them. Sorry.
You're a little biased, but you're on
A little bit.
target. You're
A
on
little bit.
target.
Well,
Now,
it's funny. I posted a thing on a meme kind of thing on TikTok a while back where I said, it was comparing Reagan and Bush and so forth, or talking about Reagan and Bush and Trump, and how that Reagan and Trump both did, or Reagan and Bush both did things that were outside the pale. Reagan had his Iran Contra, where he did illegal things, but we didn't pursue those because it was seen as even though the Supreme Court hadn't ruled that way at that time, it was seen as kind of he was conducting policy. It was bogus policy, it was rotten policy, but it was still presidential policy. George Bush lied us into a war. We were attacked by Saudi Arabia and we invaded Iran.
right.
Iraq. It was stupid and it was vile, and both of them got away with it completely. Nobody went after them. They didn't
No.
need immunity
No.
because it was perceived that that's what presidents do. And sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. Now, suddenly Trump needs immunity for some reason, right? Well, somebody took me to task and said, well, you only talked about, you're very tribal because you only talked about Republicans. And I said, Obama had nobody arrested in his 8 years. Not one person arrested and convicted of anything. Reagan had, many, many. So did Bush, and so did Trump. Republican administrations have criminals in them. They're arrested and they're sentenced to prisons.
Right.
Clinton had one, and Obama had none, and Joe's had none. So, yeah, I'm tribal because Republicans are criminals and idiots,
You know, you
and
know,
Democrats are not.
we're going to take a break here in a minute, but I wanted to bring something up. We keep hearing the Democrats having their little meetings. And we keep hearing about them pressuring Joe Biden to step aside. Let's be honest. All the meetings in the world, all the intentions in the world, they can't do shit to Joe Biden. He needed 1,600 delegates to get the nomination. He has 3,900.
Yeah,
Nobody's stronger in D.C. right now than Joe Biden. It comes down to Joe Biden makes the decision. And all they can hope to do, they can't pressure him. They can try to persuade him or cause him to decide for himself that he's going to step aside. And you made a good point. You've got people out there saying, I'm convinced that Joe Biden has zero chance of winning over Donald Trump, and he'll probably lose in a landslide. Now, there is zero data that shows that that's
none.
even close. That is a bullshit lie. That is a desperate claim to get what they want. And that says a lot about the people who say that. Anybody who says that, I immediately discount, call them
Right.
an enemy. And when this is all said and done, these motherfuckers are going to pay a price.
Yeah. Well, I hope so because I've kept a little list of those
I
who
got a
are,
list.
and I couldn't vote for them anyway, but I never will. And I will point out to people in their districts and in their states that no, they should not support these people because they're not truly your friend. They are corporate entities, and those who don't speak out against corporations, who don't speak out against corporate the corporate healthcare industry and that sort of things. Those who don't, your Joe Manchins, and so forth. These people are not Democrats. They're
No,
not liberals. They are bought and paid for by the corporate machine, and they should be discounted. They should be replaced. We need ideological warriors here. We don't need go-alongs.
no, no. And you say, like you say, some of these people, all different parts of the country, we can't vote for them. Fortunately, we have a platform to come here and talk shit about them
Right.
and expose them for who they are. This is my problem. We've got a serious election. People claiming it is the most important election in history, and realistically, it probably is because it's between democracy and authoritarianism or a dictator. That's a pretty big deal. We're coming
Well,
down
look.
to the last 4 months, and now we've got people on our own side trying to muck that up. That is more
Well,
egregious than what the Republicans are doing. I really believe that.
absolutely, it is, and I go back to what I said way back, and you've pointed it out too before. When a Democrat is wounded, then the jackals start to circle from his own party,
Right,
uh, or her. Always, Republicans don't do that. They form a circle around the wounded one and deny, 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 fight, fight,
right,
fight. We need to do the same. Um, I mean, if someone is guilty, I want him punished. Yeah,
right,
but if it is just as in this case, as it usually is, it's just a matter of perception. No, make them prove it in court. Don't
right.
sign on just because you want to have some sort of virtue claiming. Oh, well, I'm better than him because I didn't do that, and he must be punished, even if we don't know the facts of it, right? But that's always what happens with the Democrats. As soon as the accusation is enough with the Democrats, and that should not be.
Yeah. Well, I think the Democrats who are going after Joe Biden are going to find out they fucked around and found out because this seems to be making Joe stronger with the people. And when it
Yes.
comes down to it, the people are the ones that vote. The people with the money just try to manipulate the vote, but they're going about it the wrong way because the more you kick Joe's ass and the more he comes out and shows that he's perfectly cognitive, he's slow because he's 81, but he's the smartest motherfucker in the room. As long as he keeps doing that, it's going to strengthen Joe. I've said before, I said, listen, in 2020, when he won, they asked me, would he be the nominee in 2024? I said, no, he's going to be too old. Joe said he was going to be a transitional president. He knew he was only going to go one term. But then the unforeseen happened. Donald Trump leaves White House And they should have let him go and told him, don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you, because he's done nothing but damage the party. But of course, they bring him back into the fold. They send Kevin McCarthy to kiss his ass. They bring him back, which they will come to realize that was the fatal flaw for the Republican Party. And at that point, Joe said, fuck. I beat him once. I got to beat him again. I'm 81 years old. I want to retire and fish and whatever the fuck, but the country's important. The future of my kids and my grandkids and my great grandkids is important. So now I have to go up against Donald Trump again. Now, even at that point, I would have been cool saying, yeah, Joe's a little slow. Maybe we should get somebody in there. But that should have happened 2 years ago, not 4 months before the election. 4 months is too close to get another candidate, build that candidate up, get money. And Old Soul suggested something. I suggested something too. We know how the Republicans react. They will find the most minuscule thing about any candidate. They will exaggerate it and it'll become a scandal. And now we got 2 months to fucking recover from that. They've done everything they can to Joe Biden. Let's not hand them a fucking win because we're nervous or just stupid or gaslighting.
Exactly. I really want to stress this, and we've kind of touched on it already, but don't trust the media. They're
No,
bought.
no,
They're
yeah,
bought. They're all bought.
all
Now,
of them.
MSNBC exists because a corporate entity knows there is a certain segment of the population that is really liberal, and they like to see their issues discussed and their point of view pointed to as the proper one. It's just a commercial operation, just like all the others. So, yeah, watch MSNBC. They have some good people, they have some good ideas on there, and they will, for the most part, tell you the truth. But they will also report that Joe is under attack by all these other Democrats, and they will pontificate about it and so forth and so on. And it just muddies the water. Don't trust the media. Go with your gut. You know, I put this on TikTok the other day too. If your menu choice is between a cheese sandwich and the rotting corpse of a shithouse rat, don't carp because the cheese sandwich is a little toasted.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, Ed, we're going to take a break here and we're going to do what the media should be doing. We're going to go away from whether Joe's cognitively capable to what we all should be talking about, Democrats alike all throughout the country. Let's talk about the shit show that is Donald Trump and all the things falling on his head. We'll spend the next half talking about that. So we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. We have the great fortune that Ed has finally come back. He's a busy guy. He's retired. He's old, but for whatever reason, he's got all kinds of shit going on, and we're happy for you. But we spent a lot of time talking about Joe Biden, whether he should step aside. I think we made our opinions quite clear, and we think Joe should stay, and Joe should flip off everybody and just do what he's doing because I think the people like it. But what we really need to talk about is the competition. That seems to have gotten away from some Democrats and the media. While all this bullshit is going on about Joe Biden, there are some pretty horrific things happening on Donald Trump's side, and we don't seem to have time to talk about it.
Yeah, and it's like I drew the distinction both on TikTok and for you just before the break when I compared um, Joe to a cheese sandwich, slightly toasted, and Trump to a the rotting carcass of a shithouse rat.
Right.
That it really is that different. I mean, Trump is that bad, and Joe is just slightly toasted. He's a little over the hill. He is a little. He's like me. You
Yeah.
know. I mean.
And me.
And all of us who were not, we've lost a couple of steps over the years, right? But I'm still cognizant of everything that goes on around me at this point, and I have a fair grasp of the issues, and I'm still able to feed myself and to get most of the things done that I need to get done in a timely manner without hurting myself. So, but Trump, on the other hand, there is no choice here. The fact that Trump is a candidate for president of the United States makes me think that maybe this country's shot. I
Yeah.
mean, really, if you get to the point where one of the candidates is this bad and is still competitive, what is going on? Maybe we were wrong. The Civil War, maybe we should have just let them go. And this from a guy who lives in a former Confederate state for now. But anyway,
Well, I've
there,
said this, and see if you agree with this. And I
uh,
think people think this is a crazy statement. I don't. I've only been alive since 1960. Dwight D. Eisenhower was the president, then Kennedy, then Johnson, and Nixon, and so forth. Um, in my lifetime, at the very least, Donald Trump, when you figure everything in, he is the absolute worst presidential candidate from a major party in my history. I would venture to say in the history of this country, there's never been a worse candidate with more shit hanging on his back.
exactly. And I mean, he was ineffective, completely ineffective in a good way, and totally effective in a bad way.
Right.
I mean, everything he did was wrong. Everything he did was terrible. Everything he did diminished the country in almost irreversible ways. And as I say, I'm flummoxed. I'm dumbfounded that a candidate this bad could still be seen as viable. Why aren't the media? I mean, every person in the media, except for Fox, which is not news, it is propaganda. We all know that. We'll just set that aside as a given, okay? Don't watch Fox. It's not news, and they are lying to you all the time. All the others, though, have some form of integrity. Most of them do, the people who work for them, if not the parent entity. But why aren't they every time they talk about Trump pointing out what an abysmal person and candidate this man is and why it is a travesty that he's being considered for the highest office in the land? Anyone with integrity should do that.
Well, I think the difference we have. I mean, we go back to Richard Nixon. He did what he did, which was about 1/20th of what Donald Trump has done. But even at that point, the Republicans said, "Yeah, that's a bridge too far. We're going to go and straighten this guy out and get things back on track." Now, when Donald Trump was president, no matter what he did, no matter how crazy, the Republicans wouldn't push back. And the media just tried to inflame that because it meant money, it meant viewers to them. We have gone amok as a country. We've run amok as a country, and specifically with the Republican Party. There are no norms, there are no lines, there is nowhere they're willing to stop. They've shown us they've done everything, and Donald Trump has capitalized on this thing. You have the worst human to ever run for any political office, and the Republican Party says, "Yeah, go man, go." So we've got an entire party that has no integrity. And we know the media doesn't have integrity. They don't give a fuck. You pointed out that has nothing about to do with truth or justice or what's right. It's about the bottom line. And if a
Yeah.
shit show, a burning barn, or a train wreck is going to make you money, run that shit. And they've just perpetuated it by saying, "Yeah, that's good. Keep doing it."
Yeah, and take a look if you haven't, and most of you probably haven't. You're busy, I understand that. And I don't expect you to shell out money to read Project 2025. Don't do that. You're giving them money. No, it's all over the internet. There's plenty of places you can go to read it for free. You'll be horrified. Do you realize that they want to get rid of public radio and public television? That's in there. There's so many things that they want to get rid of. They want to criminalize librarians. They want anything that will push us back to the 1860s, therefore. And if you go across this great country of ours, you will find these imposing edifices that were built in the Gilded Age. These giant mansions that nobody can live in anymore because they're just too expensive. You know,
Right.
they've been turned over to the state, and people go and marvel if there was ever enough money to build these things that people lived in them. They had staffs of they were like medieval kingdoms, fiefdoms, where they just had hundreds of people working there, working the farms and working in the houses and so forth. And then after the Depression and after Roosevelt, that was no longer possible because they were taxed at a rate that didn't allow them to have that many extra funds. But then, beginning with Reagan, it came back, and now they're building them again all over the place. Where there's a Bezos mansion or others, these people that have these huge amounts of money that they're building these things. They're either guys like Bezos or they're preachers.
Well, you know, the
Take your
Republicans,
pick.
the Republicans are learning a valuable lessons, and they're learning it too late. They come out with this Project 2025. It's all about evangelical Christians, and the Republicans, they don't really have any sensibilities. They're just with anybody who's going to get them votes and money. So they put out this Project 2025. The evangelicals are solidly behind it. They'll spew it from the mountaintops, but the Republicans say, "Yeah, we're with you, but let's not talk about it." But they've got a problem now because they've got social media, and they've got people like us and other people even more impactful in social media that will dig this shit out. They will dig this shit and expose it to people. And there's the problem for the Republicans. They want to support it because they want to get the benefits, but they don't want to take the heat when it's exposed. And now it's been exposed. Donald Trump said, "I don't know much about it. I don't know who's behind it. That's some crazy shit." Unfortunately, when the document comes out, Donald Trump's name is mentioned over 300 times. He's trying to separate himself from that, but there's video and him showing up in the document. He can't. And when it's exposed for what it is, even right wing people are going to say, "Whoa, wait a fucking minute." It's like Roe v. Wade. There's plenty of Republicans who say, "Yeah, that's a bridge too far." And therein lies the problem for the Republicans. They've been exposed for who they are. They've been able to hide it and gaslight people. "Oh, that's not us." And then when they get in, they bring it in. They sneak it in the fucking back door. Well, they can't anymore. They've been exposed for what they are. And this Project 2025 is just another thing like Roe v. Wade, like the Supreme Court decision that's going to sink it for them in November.
Right. They want to get rid of contraception. There's so many things they want to do that's all in there. Also, for those folks online, I understand that Facebook is starting, they've got a filter thing that if you write something about Project 2025, it'll be deleted. So if you write it, put dashes between the 2025 20-0, I mean 2-0-25, so forth.
Yeah.
Or also they're referring to it as Project 47 or something 47
There's
now too,
Article
but
47,
the
which
article said
it's a
same
different
thing.
it's a different thing, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, and that's for their platform, I believe, is what they're using that so that it doesn't show up in their platform, even though it is the same thing, right? At least they have a platform. That last time it was just whatever Trump says, we're fine. That was the Republican platform.
Well, and
Um, it
that's what
still
I've
is essentially.
that's what I've said before about the media. They're worried about Joe having one bad debate. Debates have never had any impact on elections over the generations. But I do this little TikTok, and I said, "Listen, we know that Joe had trouble in the debate. There's people pushing back, but there's a lot of important stories that are pertinent to the upcoming election that somehow the media doesn't have time to run or refuses to do it." So I'll give those stories. And the one story that is the craziest that should sink everything is Donald Trump claiming he never knew Jeffrey Epstein. Now we know who Jeffrey Epstein is. He is the most prolific pedophile in the history of this country. He says, "I didn't know him. I kind of met him a couple times." So now this document comes out from Florida, from a grand jury 16 years ago. Donald Trump's name appears in it 69 times. Donald Trump is in the call log saying, "Hey, I got an appointment coming up for my massage with the most prolific pedophile in history." And some people will say, well, that's not true, or it's a hoax, it's fake. But one
No.
of the things about adjudicating a case or putting together a case is corroboration. And I remind folks of this. Back in the Access Hollywood videotape, Donald Trump confessed to sexually abusing or sexually assaulting women. In Ivana's book, his ex wife, she said he violently raped her. Now, she tried to go back from that because it was costing him money, but it was in the book. She said what she said. There are 26 women who have accused him of sexual assault. He has lost and been found liable for rape against E. Jean Carroll. Prior to 2016's election, there was a lawsuit where he was a co-defendant with Jeffrey Epstein, and the issue was raping a 13-year-old woman. Now, those documents are out there, and if you read those documents, there's some pretty horrifying shit. And there's also an interview with this woman who's now an adult. So if you tell me you don't know Jeffrey Epstein, you show up in the documents and you want to say it's fake, well, there's a lot of corroborating circumstantial evidence, enough to create an investigation and possibly a conviction. You can't deny this whole thing. And unfortunately, the media has never talked about it. I've talked about this lawsuit with this 13-year-old girl situation for fucking 4 years, and nobody's grabbed hold of it. And you would think this is a sexy, sensational issue. Why wouldn't you do it? But it's there and it's coming out now, if not by the media, by social media.
Yeah, and hopefully it gets some legs this time. Hopefully somebody goes after it and brings it to light more. I mean, I've seen probably 10, 15 different videos and photographs of Trump with Jeffrey Epstein, and the logs show that. I mean, supposedly they were going to release all the logs, but there's been a holdup on that. I'm not sure what's going on there. We also know that it wasn't just the Republicans who had people on the flights to the island. You know, there were plenty of Democrats and other people. Bill Gates was a frequent visitor,
Burn
apparently.
them all to the ground. I don't care what their
I don't give a
affiliation is.
shit. I don't either. You know, I mean, this is Bill Clinton, whoever
I
was
don't care. Yeah.
involved. I don't care. You know, they did it. You know, you got to pay the piper. If it takes Trump's down, Trump, I don't care who else it takes down. You
I don't
know,
know.
go ahead. They deserve it. I mean, you draw a line. You have to draw a line at some point, or if you don't, then what's it all about?
Right.
I mean, I'm tired of people preaching one thing on Sunday morning and doing something else Saturday night. Get your shit together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Donald Trump is getting nervous now too. I think the Project 2025, you can see him when he's backpedaling from that. He's having to backpedal from Jeffrey Epstein. There's a lot of shit hanging over his head. And I'm still not convinced that he will necessarily be the nominee. He will go to the convention, he will be made the nominee. But can he hang on between now and November? There's a lot of shit happening. He thinks he's going to get away from not being sentenced in the Manhattan District thing. Well, he's not going to be able to overturn this or delay it any more than he already has. And come September, he is going to get sentenced. And there are a lot more people now saying that he will be sentenced to prison. You know, it's a first time offense. It's not that big offense, but he's got it 34 times. And all the lack of remorse and all the poor behavior. A lot of people of note that I trust on social media, lawyers, former prosecutors, are starting to say he's going to get fucking jail time. He may not go
Oh,
to jail right
please.
away, but just that. Don't you think people said, oh, they delayed it? That's a terrible thing. I don't know if it's a terrible thing, because if he was sentenced in July, that was 17 months from the election. When he gets sentenced in September, we're now, or 17 weeks.
7 weeks.
And now it's only 7 weeks, kind of tantamount to October surprise. I think
Well,
this is beneficial.
I certainly hope so. There are other things that have come out too that he could still be charged on that he hasn't even been charged on yet. that probably would not be, that the Supreme Court's bogus immunity thing would have nothing to do with. So we'll see what else we can do. But the media needs to get their shit straight. This is a two-person contest, and you've got to report on both, or you're just showing us how compromised you really are. Don't give me all day about Joe is in trouble. Talk about Trump some too.
Yeah,
Show that,
absolutely.
and they don't. They ignore that. And part of it is that they only can focus on one story at a time, apparently.
Yeah.
But the other part is that they're all directed from above. That the news director gets his or her instructions from the corporate office.
Right. Right.
Always,
But
always, no
you know,
matter
we
what they say.
we keep hearing about the polls, how close they are, or Donald Trump is winning. And we know how often they've been wrong. They've been wrong every motherfucking time. But I think the thing that people are ignoring, the media is ignoring, and we're seeing more and more of. If you look at voting blocks, I think there are more people that are afraid of and hate Donald Trump and will not vote for Donald Trump than there are people who will vote for Donald Trump. I think there are more people that are afraid of and hate Donald Trump and won't vote for Donald Trump than support Joe Biden. That's a group that's not being represented in these polls. I saw a statistician recently, and she said, listen, you got to take the polls for what they are. If they're calling people, even on their cell phones, how many of you answer a cell phone call when it comes from a number you don't know?
Not
Nobody
me.
does. So she says, who's then answering the questions? Who's
Right.
taking these polls? Is it landlines? Is it made up? And that's what people have to understand. Well, the polls said, yeah, but we got to know who runs the polls, who owns the polls, what their agenda is, who they're talking to, what the questions are, and then what they do with the data after they have it. Because we know any data you can make look good for yourself if you have the right people working on it. That's why I
Um,
don't trust polls, because I don't know whose agenda is pushing. And we know that they will support their agenda regardless of what the polls say.
exactly. We were both in radio. People know that. And when you're in radio, you spend a lot of time doing other things because radio in the beginning doesn't pay very much. We both did, you did surveys, right?
Yeah.
Or so,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Well,
Yeah.
so did I. I worked for a company that did product surveys,
We did record
television.
surveys.
Yeah,
Record
that
survey.
true. That too. And we both know how easy it is to manipulate. It really is. You can get what you want. You can get the answer you want for your client if you work at it. And it's the same with any survey or anything else. But I also set appointments for product salesmen, specifically siding windows, that sort of thing. And when I went in for my first training session, they weren't allowed to say old people. They called them day leads. And they talked about how to get the day leads to talk to you. You've got to have a conversation with them. You got to make them, you got to identify with them. How you doing today? Blah, blah, blah. Talk to them for 10 minutes and then zoom in for the kill.
Right.
I mean, it was a very much a thing. And that's who's answering. People who just want to talk to somebody a
Right.
lot of times. And so I didn't feel too good about it, and I didn't do it very long. But you were exploiting these people just because they were lonely and needed to talk to somebody, right?
Right.
But I needed to make a buck, so I did. And they could say no. They didn't have to. I didn't have a knife at their throat or anything. But at the same time, like I said, I didn't feel good about it, and I didn't do it for very long. But still, I learned that is the case, and that's probably who a lot of the poll and you can lead them in to say whatever you want them to say as well with the questions you ask and so forth. And I'm sure that happens all the time.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we were assured there was going to be a red wave during the midterms, right? I remember seeing Ted Cruz just ebulliently calling out the red tsunami that was coming, and of course it didn't. The
Prancing
guy,
like a show horse.
yeah, exactly. So no, I don't trust the polls. They're a waste of time. Um, what they need to be doing is they claim to be balanced. Be balanced. Talk about Epstein. Talk about Project 2025. Talk about how Trump's. They'll show you 10,000 hours of video of Biden's debate performance. Show me some more of Trump uh, going off on sharks and batteries and windmills and whales and all of that, and Mitch McConnell freezing up for a minute, that
Yeah.
sort of thing. There's plenty to go around, but it really feels like really remember cheese sandwich, rat carcass, right?
Right.
That's the difference.
It
Trump is a
absolutely.
rat carcass.
It's true.
Anyway,
The thing about it is, I think this is a real turning point for America because they don't consider how many people are scared. I mean, we know that in 2020, we had a massive turnout, big vote for Joe Biden. Again, not because Joe was the ultimate candidate, but because people were terrified of Donald Trump. And then I say, well, if that was the case in 2020, what caused people to feel better between 20 and 24? If nothing else, they're more terrified, they're more scared because of the democracy hanging by a thread. I think that what that's going to do is the Republicans and Democrats that are involved too are going to be exposed for what they are after this November election. But I think the media is going to be exposed too. And frankly, Ed, that's good news for you and I. If all the
yeah,
media is exposed for the bullshit they're talking about, where are they going to go? Where are they going to get their news or their input? And we can see it now with social media. I mean, I'm an old white guy sitting in my fucking living room, and I've got a lot of people coming to the podcast and to TikTok, and it's because I bring in other people of a like mind, of a similar age, maybe younger people at times, and we're talking about real facts and the truth, and there is no couching it with, well, I got to make the bottom line or I got to get the ratings up. When I do the podcast and when you do your TikToks, we're not thinking about followers. We're not
no,
changing followers, changing our opinion based on followers. We're doing what we do and let the chips fall where they may. And surprise, it fucking works when you tell the truth.
that's right. And I should take time to wave to some people and say thanks. I really like that you tell me you like what I'm on.
Yeah.
On TikTok, a lot of the people who follow me on TikTok will say, "Are you going to be on Friday? I'm really looking forward to hearing you back on with Mike." You guys, so yeah. I mean,
Well, you should check the comments in the YouTube video part of it. I mean,
okay.
that's become kind of a hotbed. I get a lot of comments about the video, the video podcast, and they do love you. That's the secret to having a successful podcast. Be smart enough to know there are people smarter and better and more articulate there are, and have them on the fucking show.
There we go. Well, anyway, I appreciate the folks who follow on TikTok and also when I'm on here. It's very gratifying. Now, I just hope you'll take what we say to heart because we don't make a lot of money from this. I don't make any money from it, but the what we do is tell you the truth as best as we can determine it.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and we don't do it for personal fame. I mean, uh, people said, well, you just get paid from the DNC or you're just trying to get famous. Fuck, man. I've been in radio. You get a little bit of notoriety. Anybody who's on TikTok or doing this podcast that think they're famous, people will say, oh, you got all these guys on TikTok. You're famous. No, fame is when you walk down the street and a lot of people recognize you. From time to time, I get somebody recognize me. I consider we're notable in some circles. Certainly not fucking famous. And that's not a reason to do this. My ego isn't big enough where I've got to be. There was this trucker that was on TikTok early on when I got on, and he'd go through truck stops and people would recognize him and stuff. And this dumb fuck wore a t shirt that said, I'm TikTok famous. And it was a big deal to him. So God bless him. If that's what he wants, I'm gratified when people recognize me, but more importantly, I hope they listen because the reason you and I do this isn't even about us because you and I are going to be fine no matter what happens. We've got short time left. We've got our lives pretty much set. we really are concerned about what we're going to leave for this country and for our kids and grandkids and great grandkids. We're at a pivot point. We either go one way or we just go fucking south and in the shithole. And we're concerned enough, and everybody who listens to this is concerned enough to try to get the right thing done. And that's what we're doing. And that's not what the media is doing.
Yeah, and I actually exult in my anonymity. I don't push. I do not. I do not push either the podcast or the my TikTok stuff locally. The people I don't press it on Facebook. I will edit some things and put them up as reels sometimes, but they're the ones that are more folksy kind of observations, not the political stuff. The reason being that I really do fear for my existence if it were known just how radical that I am, based on where I live now. I mean, I just walked by the courthouse this morning where they're having early voting because they have the Republican primary next week, and there's like an inch along the front of the courthouse square where you can actually have political signs. And then after that, they're banned, right? But there are signs there for the two guys that are running for the state Senate seat, and they're exactly the same.
Yeah.
I mean, their positions, they're both running all these commercials right now saying exactly the same thing. One of them is the son of our current congressional representative, Diane Harshbarger. It's her son, Bobby. He's running for state senate. And this guy is such a doofus, they won't let him talk. They have pictures of him with his family, and they have other people talking about how staunch conservative he is and how he'll protect women's sports and keep men out of women's bathrooms. So this is kind of the crap they're selling. Then you've got this guy Lundeen, who's been a state senator since Jackson administration, I think, and he's this old dude who the only thing it says on his billboards is that he's for school choice, which of course means taking money from the public schools and giving it to private schools. But people around here are such dunderheads, they don't realize that. Their kids are not going to private schools, they're going to the public schools, and their tax money is going to go to some guy who's got his kid in a private school, or somebody who's got him in one of these ridiculous religious schools. That's his one issue. But he's a staunch conservative, and he's got all these other people talking about him too. But they're two candidates that are both sides of the same coin. I mean, there's no choice going on here. So yeah, I'd kind of keep it on the down low around here so I don't get
Yeah.
shot when I'm walking my dog or something.
When I'm around here or other places that I go, I'm happy to be recognized. It's more exciting to me than I'm sure it is for them, and I appreciate it immensely. That said, I'm probably not going to do a meet and greet down in Dothan, Alabama. Dothan, Alabama.
Right.
Those are the times when I don't want people to recognize when they might be enemies. I've always had good luck. Everybody's been friendly and nice, but I'm sure there's some people out there that don't like me that may have run across me. I'm interested. You mentioned the RNC convention coming up this
Right.
coming week in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Just so the folks in Wisconsin know, and the adversarial nature between Minnesota and Wisconsin about sports
Yeah.
and all that stuff. I just want
Right.
to remind the people in Milwaukee, first of all, I love the city. I've been there a number of times. I want to go back. I think it's a lovely city. But it's important that you remember that Donald Trump said your city sucks, the
Yeah.
very place you're having the convention. They look at you as flyover country. They look down their noses at you because you're not East Coast, West Coast, rich, whatever. So now this RNC convention is going to happen this week. And I'm not sure what's going to happen. You get a bunch of people out partying that tend toward violence, that are crazy in the first place. This could end up being an absolute shit show.
Well, kind of hope so.
I do too. I do
I'm
too.
sorry, Milwaukee folks. I love you, but and I hope nothing gets broken. But at the same time, anybody who goes to Republican convention deserves what they get. Sorry, just
Yeah.
do.
Well, do you think there might be much protesting coming from Democrats? Because Wisconsin, they like to portray it as a red state, but it's not really a full red state. I mean, they've got a liberal Supreme Court now, and they got a liberal governor. Um, Do you think there'll be much in the way of liberal protest out there?
Well, you got to remember back when it was a hotbed of union activity, including Milwaukee, of course, it was, very much almost a radical state. I mean,
Right.
back in the farmer labor party days and that sort of thing, the real radicals, that's where they were in Wisconsin. But then you had Tail Gunner Joe from Wisconsin
Right, right.
too.
You have
So
the
uh,
outliers.
yeah, it's always been a study in contrast. So who knows? I mean, once upon a time, I would have thought liberal folks would have turned out Milwaukee from the labor unions and so forth. Maybe they will again. We need a resurgence of unions. We really, really do. And we need to help them in every way we can because, beginning with Reagan, they kind of fell off. And that lost funding for the Democratic Party. It lost uh, boots on the ground for the Democratic Party. We need to get back to that again because we have strength in numbers. That's the only way that the hoi polloi like you and me, because we are not part of the ruling class. And it is the great triumph of the Republicans has been in convincing so many people below the poverty line that Republicans care about them. They
Right.
don't. You
No.
are either cannon fodder or you're labor, and hopefully labor that they can get as cheaply as possible, if not free. These are the people who used to run coal mines with kids in them, and they paid in. They printed their own money so people couldn't save enough money to move away and became slave labor for the coal mines. These are the Republicans. They want to turn us back to the Gilded Age when you had these few great fortunes and everybody else was a peon. So like I said before, we had one generation maybe of equality for most people, and they've been trying to crush it ever since. Don't
I,
let them.
I'm just interested to see what's going to happen to Donald Trump when he shows up in Milwaukee. Because I'll tell you this, living in Minnesota, being competitive with Wisconsin, if I went to Wisconsin, any city in Wisconsin, and I said the Green Bay Packers suck, I may not get out of there. I may
You'd be a
not get
dead
on the.
man.
I'll tell you a story. My wife and I went to Green Bay one time, and I thought it was this horrible, dirty industrial town. I thought it was going to be shitty. Actually, Green Bay is a very nice town,
Yeah,
and the stadium was kind of fun and cool to see. But my wife comes off as a nice, friendly person, and she is, um, but she's also very competitive. She doesn't like Wisconsin, not the state. We love the state. We go there all the time, but the sports people. I've told
sure.
the story about being at a Gopher Wisconsin football game in Madison, and I told her, don't put the kids in Gopher jerseys, not when we're in Madison. And of course she does because she doesn't listen to shit from me. Probably good choice. But when we get there, there's this drunk guy behind us, and my son, 5 years old, stands up and goes, "Yay, Gophers!" And the guy behind her says says to my son, "Sit down, you fucking punk ass bitch," to my 5-year-old son. And my other son said, "Are you going to do something about that?" I go, "Oh no, I'm the least of his problems now. He's got
Yeah.
mom to deal with." But one time we're over in Green Bay and we're at the stadium and we're having a good time, great places to eat and all this stuff. And my wife's got a little rebel in her. She's not willing to expose it um, like I do. But we get in front. She goes, "Take a picture of me in front of whatever the stadium's called. I should know it. Um, that's stupid. I do know it." Anyway, she's standing in
Yeah.
front of the stadium and I'm getting ready to take the picture. And she
Biden,
says,
Biden moment. Biden moment. That's what we're
"Yeah,
going to call
yeah.
those from now on.
I should
Biden
step
moments.
aside right now. I should step
Yeah.
aside." But as we're taking the picture, she's standing there and she goes, "Hold on a second. I'll tell you when to go." And she says, "Now go." And she flipped. Now I'm going, "Holy shit. I hope nobody saw this because they're going to get angry." That's what I'm saying. When Donald Trump shows up, he could be in for not a very pleasant reception.
Well, can I tell you my story about Green Bay?
Absolutely.
All right. Many years ago, my wife and I had just formed with some friends a theater company. called Outcast. Nobody remembers that. Maybe if anybody remembers that, you don't. Anyway, we did some good shows and so forth, but we were always scrambling for money. And the museum where I was working at the time, the Walker Arts Center, brought in David Hockney for a show called Hockney Paints the Stage. And it was a recreation of theatrical sets that David Hockney had designed. And as a part of it, they brought in these costumes that had been for the Magic Flute, I believe, if I remember right. And these characters were called Punchinellos, and it was like a green jumpsuit, and then there was a tall green hat, and then you wore a mask like a Green Lantern wears, but it had a long nose on it, right? But it was all green with a green hat, and they hired this theater company that I worked with to publicize the show, and they sent us all over the place. They sent us to these really great resident restaurants, which was great because you got a great meal, but you had to do it in costume. And the only thing they could say, if somebody asked, "Who are you? Why are you doing this?" all we could say was, "All I know is Hockney paints the stage." That's all we could say, right? So we're going to these restaurants, we're going to malls, we're going to different places. Um, at one point, another person in the theater and I go to this one place, and then we realize we don't have money to park. So I said, "Well, I got my cash card. Let's go in the bank." So don't go in a bank if you're wearing a mask. It's not a good idea. But we survived that. Okay. But I
You
saw the
couldn't
guard
take off
coming.
the mask. You couldn't take off the mask?
No, no, couldn't do anything. So then they send us a a Minnesota Vikings versus Green Bay football game
Oh,
at
shit.
the Metrodome. Remember that place?
Yeah.
It was still inflated at the time. So we go in and we get our seats, which are great seats, by the way, not box seats, but they're good seats. And we sit down, and I feel a tap on my shoulder, and I said, "Oh no!" I didn't realize when we first went. And I go, "Oh my God, we're wearing green and we're sitting with the Vikings fans. What is going to happen?" There's a tap on my shoulder, and the guy goes, "I don't know what's going on here, dude, but would you mind taking off the hat?" That's all they want. If that's all you want, it's fine. So and then we cheered for the Vikings, so everybody was okay, fine. But there for a second, I thought my life was over from the
You,
Minnesota side of things.
what this is how twisted my mind is. And I always reference things from the past. When you're sitting there describing this green costume and that weird looking green mask with a long nose, the only thing I could think of, Larry's sitting there going, "I got to get that fucking mask. That'll be hilarious for the next show." So Larry, don't bother getting the mask. I know what it looks like. Stick with the tried and true, the ones you've got. Um,
Oh, David Hockney, by the way, is a really great guy. He used to hang out with us at night in the guards room. Just super guy.
well, we're about ready to wrap this up, and I think we need to bring it all together here. This thing with Joe Biden and this information coming out on Donald Trump. It just seems to be a mishmash. Nobody seems to know what's going on. We don't seem to be on the right track. What are your thoughts going from here till at least next week when you'll probably be back? What do you see happening in the next week? Is anything going to change? Is
I,
anything
I'm
going to improve?
I'm hoping one of two things. The thing I hope for every morning when I wake up is a certain obituary on the front page, and you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
If that doesn't happen, I'm hoping something else comes along to knock this off the front page, and then it's done. Then it's over with because they will make every effort to get Joe out there. He'll be more active. He'll be in front of people, and eventually people will say, and I got to throw this in real quick, right? All these people are saying Joe isn't up to the job. If he's not up to the job in January, he's not up to the job now. Why aren't you asking him to resign right now,
Right.
Nancy,
Right. Right.
George?
Right.
Why aren't you
Exactly.
asking him to resign right now if he is so far gone? You know better, okay? Leave it. Just let it take its natural cause of things. It'll be off the front page. They won't be talking about it on cable anymore. And, unless he really does make a gaffe, and then we'll go from there. But no, something's going to happen. But in the meantime, what I hope will happen is that the Epstein story will get some legs. Get them talking about that.
Yeah.
That would be great. Otherwise, these guys, these Democrats, need to shut their mouths. And James Carville, if I ever meet you, I'm going to punch you in the nose.
I was never a fan of him. And I'm
No,
thinking,
me neither.
here's a skinny old guy that hasn't been in politics for 20, 30 years. What you think is important, the world has changed, motherfucker. Back off. I don't care what your strategy was with Bill Clinton, because this is 2024 now, and we're in a different fucking world.
Absolutely. And no, I was never a fan of most of those Clinton supporters. Um, because to me, Clinton in a lot of ways was just Reagan light, and I didn't
Yeah.
care for that. You know, um, I do think Clinton did some good things. I think he helped us get out of the Reagan Bush recession. But welfare, as we know it, no, I never agreed with him on that, and a number of other things too. And he was a sleazy dog when it came to women. So,
Well, he was,
uh,
but I think Bill Clinton had the benefit of appearing and being elected at another shifting point in this country. We'd
that's
gone
true. I
through
give him
all
credit.
we go through all the I don't think he caused that shift. He benefited from it. We went through all that stuff with Reagan and Bush, and people were getting tired of it. And then they were more accepting of Clinton because he, as you say, was Reagan light. And I think that's kind of where we're at now. People are getting very tired of going through this constant chaos of Donald Trump and Republicans and MAGA. And I think what we're seeing in people that are upset about what's going on, we're coming to that pivot point again when people have said, okay, we're tired of this, we're done with it, we're going to try something different. And I think that's what's happening in 2024. I have no way to prove that, but based on what I've seen in the past and the feelings from the way people are talking, I think that is going to have more power than any candidate, that the people of this country are fucking tired and want to calm things down.
I hope that's the case. And I want to point out one thing for those who are saying, well, Joe's saying, that I'm the only one who can beat Trump. And to a certain extent, I think he's right. And the reason I think that is someone pointed out FDR, who was a very sick man
Yeah.
during his final campaign. And he had had three terms already, 12 years. He could have rested on his laurels and had, but he realized, I think he saw that um, my name is enough to get us elected. I
Right.
don't have to do a lot here because people are grateful for getting us out of the Depression, for getting us through World War II. All I have to do is announce, and we will win. If I don't, there's a chance that the Republicans will push change or something like that, and that people are just tired of seeing me and so forth. So maybe Joe is right.
I
Maybe
think
he
Joe's
has
right.
established enough that it's enough for him. He's the guy who beat Trump, and I don't know how many other people could have done that.
Right, exactly. I think there's other people that could have beaten Trump in this election, but not 4 months out. It's not
No,
a matter of it's not a matter of who's better qualified, who's ever a stronger candidate. It's too fucking late.
yeah.
You might
I
as well
mean,
jump on board with what we got and give it the best shot and beat him and not. I loved what they say. Well, if Joe runs, it's too much of a risk. That's more risk than pulling a name out of the hat and trying to build a fucking candidate in 3 months. Please, apparently you don't know shit about gambling because that's a bigger risk.
absolutely, exactly. So I'm riding with Biden.
I'm riding with Biden too.
If he comes out and says, they're right, I'm throwing my influence behind so and so, then that's who I'll go with. But for
Absolutely.
now, I mean, Joe saved us. I mean, he came in, he rescued the economy. We got the best economy in the world. Wall Street Journal says so. Other people say so. It's not benefiting everyone yet, but it's getting there. Inflation, we just saw, is down. Jobs report was great. Everything is getting better. If Trump gets in, he wants to get rid of the income tax and rely on tariffs. That's what caused the depression, people.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
Great Depression. That's exactly what they did going into the Great Depression. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
let's not do that twice, okay?
Probably a good idea not to repeat that kind of fucking behavior. Well, Ed, thank you very much for coming on. It's been a while since you've been on. We're happy that you've come back and If I can convince you to come back next week, I will. But I know you're a
So
busy man.
so far so good. Looks
You're
good.
Ed's. When we were working together, I could say, "Hey Ed, we got this little event. You want to come out? Sure, I'll come on out."
Yeah,
Now that he's retired, he's got no fucking time.
it's true. I don't know what happened. I don't know how that. How did I ever work? You know, I should have. I don't
I know
know.
what it is, Ed.
Yeah,
When you worked, you had a boss.
yeah.
When you're retired, you have a wife. And the wife controls everything. Trust me, I know this because I'm retired and I'm married. My time isn't my own. My time is wherever my wife points me at that particular moment. So I can appreciate that. And that's not a
Well,
bad thing.
there's some truth in that. She told me once, you know, you used to go to bed at 8 o'clock, so I had to stay up all evening, and you were up at 4 and you were gone. So I woke up alone. This is my time. You owe me.
Yeah, yeah, I think she's probably on target with that. Well, Ed, thank you very much for stopping back. We look forward to the time you come back next week. Before we go, I need you to tell them where they can find you because if you're not watching Ed's TikToks or on YouTube, you're missing something. It's different than what we do here, but it's entertaining, it's informational for you old people. It's not unlike Paul Harvey, and everybody loved Paul fucking Harvey.
Just check me out at Holler Troll, HOLLERTROLL on TikTok.
And
Uh,
YouTube.
and YouTube. Yeah, I haven't posted much on YouTube lately, but I should be posting some of those for sure.
All right.
But yeah, so enjoy.
Well,
Hopefully,
how old are you, Ed?
I'll be 75 in November.
You're 75. I'm 64. We're looking at 139 years of age cumulatively, and we're still kicking ass. So
That's
fuck the
right.
Republicans, fuck the Democrats. Great
Yeah,
power.
because nobody wants to hear it. I'm tempted to recite the prologue to the Canterbury Tales I learned in 12th grade, but I'll let that go for now. But that's how sharp I still am.
Well, I tell people, I said, at my age, I can remember the 70s like they were yesterday, but I frequently forget to zip my pants coming out of the bathroom. So it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. And I leave cupboard doors open. So
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. All right. For those of you listening, I want to thank you for taking the time to do that. I hope you have a great day and we will talk to you again tomorrow.